Greetings, dearest viewer. Let us look at what transpired in the second season of the hit Netflix show Bridgerton. We begin at the start of a new season. The Queen speaks of Lady Whistledown's absence during the off-season. Daphne returns to coach Eloise, who is debuting this season, and is not exactly thrilled about it. Anthony has made a checklist to help him find a wife, as he feels is his duty. The Featheringtons are in mourning, and await their cousin who inherited everything after Lord Featherington's death. The ladies of the court are presented to the Queen, and just as Eloise is about to enter, a new Lady Whistledown sheet arrives, bringing an abrupt end to the pageantry. Penelope poses as a servant to negotiate the printing of Lady Whistledown, and she is quite the haggler. Anthony spends his days interviewing prospective wives and crossing names off of his list. On a morning ride, he sees a woman and quickly follows her. It turns into a race. Finally, he catches up to the lovely woman, and she is unimpressed by him. He tries to turn on the charm, but she is only amused, and suggests they pretend the meeting never happened. Lady Danbury welcomes Mary Sharma to her home, acting as sponsor for her two daughters, Kate and Edwina. Kate makes it clear she is only there to help Edwina, and at 26 is not planning on participating in the season herself. As always, Lady Danbury hosts the first ball of the season. Violet announces loudly that Anthony is planning to take a wife this year, attracting all the women's attention. The Finches ask Portia Featherington about Philippa's dowry, and she feigns grief to avoid the subject. Danbury ushers in the Sharmas to an icy reception from the Queen. Some of the older ladies gossip about Mary having been her season's diamond, but then running off with a lowly clerk who already had a child. That would be Kate. Anthony goes out for some air and talks to the guys. Kate overhears him making crude and heartless comments about finding a wife, and then insists they leave this lion's den. Later, Lady Danbury confronts Kate about their true intentions. Turns out, Mary's parents have offered to give Edwina a sizable dowry and support Mary, but only if Edwina marries an English nobleman. At the Queen's ball, Danbury challenges her to make a splash with her selection of this season's diamond. Elle escapes to a flower field with Pen. She laments feeling compared to Daphne and constantly disappointing people, while Pen realizes her wallflower status has some advantages, and seeks her friend's approval of Whistledown. The Queen proclaims Edwina as the diamond of the season, and Anthony takes notice. She handles his interrogation while dancing well, but Kate ushers her away quickly, telling her to stay away from him. As they leave, Anthony declares he intends to marry her. As the Featheringtons return home, they see their cousin has arrived. He has already paid Philippa's dowry and moved Portia out of her rooms as they are his now. As interest rises from Edwina's diamond status, Kate acts as gatekeeper for her sister. She makes a list of suitable candidates, and Lady Danbury notes the absence of Anthony Bridgerton. As the men line up outside her door, Anthony shows up anyway and he and Kate argue. As Eloise decides to resume her search for Lady Whistledown, Colin returns home from his travels. Everyone attends the races, and Lord Lumley is escorting Edwina. Anthony gets his friend from Oxford to distract Kate, hoping for more time with Edwina. Kate picks the winning horse, displaying she shares Anthony's competitive nature. The ruse works for a bit, but Kate catches on when Dorset reveals their connection, and she whisks Edwina away. Eloise sneaks off and tries to find Lady Whistledown's printer. She interrogates a young worker, who suggests she read about women's rights instead. Philippa and Albion Finch are finally married, and Portia offers to help Cousin Jack with business matters, but he blows her off. Lady Danbury hosts another soiree for Edwina to get to know more of the gentleman. Anthony seeks out Ben to help him with poetry. Ben tries to help, reciting some lovely sentiments which Anthony tells him to write down. At the soiree, the men are meant to read poetry and such, but instead begin doing parlor tricks in turn. Portia is shocked to learn Cousin Jack gave Cressida Cowper an expensive ruby necklace. Penelope asks Colin about romance on his travels, and he says he's sworn off women, but she doesn't count because she is a friend. Ouch, poor Pen. After Lumley recites poetry and causes some swooning, Anthony barges in and begins to recite Ben's words. After looking at Kate, he throws the paper in the fire and speaks his truth, promising in action and duty he will never be found lacking. Edwina responds to this, sensing the honesty of it. Both Eloise and the Queen are narrowing their search for the identity of Lady Whistledown, and Penelope is spotted by modiste Madame Delacroix. In order to understand the significance of Aubrey Hall to the Bridgertons, we flash back to the time when Lord Edmund Bridgerton died. After hunting with Antony, he picks flowers for Violet, and a bee stings him. He must have been highly allergic, as it takes him down quickly, a pregnant Violet sobbing at his side. Poor Antony is then thrust into the role of Viscount, bombarded with questions and responsibility. He is even asked the unthinkable when Hyacinth's birth has complications. After that, he deals with his mother's profound grief, making her barely able to function. It's an integral insight to Antony's trauma. The Sharmas and Lady Danbury have been invited to Aubrey Hall. Daphne arrives bringing baby Augie. She mistakes Kate for Edwina at first, but then explains Pall Mall to the sisters. It's kind of like croquet. She explains they are very competitive, but it is all in good fun. During the match, Kate holds her own while Edwina is obviously in over her head, not having her sister's competitive nature. After a particularly bad shot, she resigns and leaves the field. Never wielding, both Kate and Antony go after their shots, finding them in a mud pit. When Kate gets stuck, Antony tries to help and they both end up on the ground, laughing. They agree to a truce, but when Kate unknowingly hits her shot near Edmund's grave, Antony leaves abruptly. Edwina and Antony spend time talking in the parlor. While awkward at first, they do find some common ground. Afterwards, super sleuths Violet and Lady Danbury listen at their doors and then engage in that familiar, knowing glance that they do. Portia hatches a plan for Prudence to seduce Cousin Jack, saying royalty does it all the time, and they're only fourth cousins after all. Yeah, that makes it better. Penelope speaks with the modiste, making it the plan to use Whistledown to increase business, while Madame Delacroix helps her with printing and secrecy. Portia's plan falls flat as Cousin Jack invites the Cowpers over and makes future plans as well. Ben reveals to Colin that he applied to the Royal Academy of Arts and is waiting to hear if he got in. Colin tries to calm him with a special brew, but Ben takes way too much and is out of his mind all night. Violet and Antony visit Edmund's grave, and he reveals he doesn't want to marry for love because he won't cause someone the pain he saw her go through when his dad died. At dinner, Antony makes a toast. Everyone expects a proposal, but he chickens out. Finally, Eloise brings Ben a letter stating he got into the art school. While he shouts out the window that they will all bear witness to his talent, Colin reveals to Eloise that he still thinks about Marina. The next morning, Kate returns from a ride and finds Antony in the garden. He apologizes and says he still plans to propose. She lays into him, but he gets distracted when a bee lands on her. She brushes it, and when it stings her, he goes into a full-fledged panic attack. She helps him start to breathe normally, and they get very close. Too close. A sudden noise snaps them out of it, and they both take off running in opposite directions. Edwina becomes determined to force Kate and Antony to spend time together, and Kate joins the hunting party. Edwina tells her plan to Daphne, who is becoming skeptical of the match herself. Kate is annoyed by having to follow a guide and goes off on her own. When Antony finds her, they argue again. They start to discuss what happened, but are interrupted by the rest of the hunting party. Colin decides to visit Marina. She is welcoming and humors him, talking about his trip. When Lord Crane returns, he and Colin hit it off and talk for ages. Finally, Marina makes him go, telling Colin she is content and he needs to move on. She does advise him to look at the people around him, even naming Penelope. Doing her friend a solid there. Kate tells Edwina she has warmed to Antony, but struggles sleeping and ends up in the library, where she and Antony have yet another moment. He explains about his father and the bee sting, making her understand his behavior earlier. A clap of thunder makes her realize the compromising position they are in, and she leaves quickly. Lady Featherington hatches a new plan to trap Cousin Jack, orchestrating him and Prudence being caught together in the orangery. The plan works, and the crowd insists he must marry her if she chooses. Edwina insists Kate and Antony dance, so he may ask for her blessing to propose. They both dance around the topic, hoping the other will admit the obvious feelings they have for one another. When Kate says she will leave after the wedding, Antony rushes away. Edwina panics, and Kate promises to fix it, going after him. They start arguing yet again, but end up talking while close to kissing, when Daphne walks in on them. Cousin Jack confronts Portia about the setup, revealing his mines in the Americas are empty. He has no money at all and was courting Cressida to remedy that situation, but now she has trapped them all. Just as everyone is leaving, Antony rushes up and proposes to Edwina, shocking everyone. The queen herself offers to host Antony and Edwina's wedding, feeling like she's proving something to Lady Whistledown. Ben starts his time at school and ends up having a fling with a model. Eloise sneaks away to a women's rights lecture, where she runs into Theo Sharp, who wrote the pamphlet. Portia and Jack hatch a plan to sell the rich men of the Ton shares in his empty mines to regain their fortune. At Promenade, Dorset asks Kate for another chance, taking her on a boat ride where they do hit it off. The women are pleased to see it, but it sparks much jealousy in Antony. He ends up posturing too much, and he and Dorset both fall in the water. It's time for the Sheffields to meet Edwina. Kate almost tells her of the arrangement, but runs out of time. At first, Lord and Lady Sheffield gush about Edwina, but at dinner, the topic of Mary's scandal comes up, and Lady Sheffield can't keep her mouth shut about it. She repeatedly insults Mary and the girl's father until finally Mary stands up for herself. In the heat of the moment, the Sheffields reveal the arrangement, shocking everyone at the table but Kate. Antony defends the Sharmas and kicks them out, but then starts to go himself. Kate explains that she arranged the whole thing. Antony knew by Edwina's reaction and wasn't angry with her, but wants to call off the wedding. When Kate asks why, he finally tells her the truth, that he has strong feelings for her, and they talk while almost kissing some more before he abruptly leaves. Edwina is upset that Kate didn't tell her the truth, but professes her love for Antony, still hoping for a positive outcome. Eloise goes to see Theo again, but this time Penelope follows her. Kate goes for her morning ride, and Antony runs into her. He wants to cancel everything, but she begs him not to, saying she will leave and these feelings will pass, but Edwina is all things good and shouldn't have her heart broken. He reluctantly agrees. The wedding will take place as soon as possible, and he leaves Kate crying in the woods. As the wedding day approaches, the queen continues to plan for both the wedding and a trap for Lady Whistledown. Kate offers Edwina her mother's bracelets to wear. Antony spends the evening drinking with his brothers. The day of the wedding, Violet is still cold to Lady Danbury, and Daphne tries to talk some sense into Antony. Edwina decides Kate should be the one to wear the bracelets. The wedding begins, and Antony spaces out for a moment, imagining Kate as his bride. When Kate accidentally drops a bracelet, he rushes down to pick it up, and Edwina finally sees the spark between them. Overwhelmed at this, she says she needs a moment and rushes out. As Mary tries to calm Edwina, she turns on Kate, demanding the truth. Edwina asks if she loves him, but Mary orders Kate from the room before she answers. Kate leaves, but seeing the Bridgertons, hides away in a storage closet. Antony also seeks out solitude, and Daphne tells Violet what she knows. The queen orders the guests to the garden, where Portia and Jack begin enacting their plans, and only Will seems skeptical. Antony goes to Edwina with a spiel about duty and roles in life, but no talk of love. Violet and Lady Danbury speak. For the first time in a long time, neither knows how to fix the situation, and they have a good laugh about it. As the women meet with the queen, they are interrupted by the king, who's delighted by the fireworks. They attempt to escort him out, but he resists. It is an awkward moment, but Edwina steps in and soothes him. Eloise decides to take advantage of the distraction to go see Theo again. Notes are sent to Antony and Kate asking them to meet. Edwina comes in and says Antony cannot give her what she wants, which is love. She tells Kate that she made up her own mind this time. Eloise speaks with Theo, and he admits that he's been thinking about her as well. The queen is with the king when Brimsley tells her their trap for Whistledown has been successful. Still standing there, Antony tells Kate, "Your sister is braver and wiser than us both." Kate says goodbye, but then they share a glorious, long-awaited kiss. Whistledown writes about the wedding and further infuriates the queen. Violet rallies the troops, refusing to hide the family away in shame. Eloise says she needs to go shopping, but as she leaves, the Queen's carriage pulls up. She accuses Eloise of being Whistledown and tells her she can either work with the crown or her family will be destroyed. She has 3 days to decide. At Promenade, both the Bridgertons and the Sharmas are shunned by the other families. They come together to make a new plan and decide to throw a ball together to show there is no scandal between them. As Kate and Antony interact, Edwina looks at them and asks, "Was I truly that blind?" The answer is yes, honey, but they all were. Eloise tells Penelope about the Queen's visit and threat. Penelope urges her not to do anything just yet. Eloise visits Theo and he tells her to leave. Jack goes to visit Will at his club, saying he knows how Will made his fortune because of his cousin's records. Remember he threw that fight last season? Basically blackmailing him into silence about the whole mine situation. Penelope sits at her writing desk deciding what to write to exonerate Eloise. Eloise tells Penelope she's decided to confess and just work with the Queen. Pen tries to talk her out of it, but Eloise just thanks her for being a loyal friend. Oh, the guilt on Pen's face. The joint ball begins and no one shows up. They decide to dance as a family and have a great time for a brief moment, but then the latest Whistledown shows up, and it reveals Eloise's visits to Theo. She runs away and the families disperse. Penelope burns her quill. Kate goes to a gazebo outside, but Antony is already there. They immediately start to argue, but then they kiss again. Antony says he will stop, but Kate says don't, and they do not stop. Antony wakes up alone in the rain, grabs a ring, and heads to see Kate. She's missing, so he rides out to find her. When he sees her, she tries to make a difficult jump, but the horse throws her off. Antony runs to her as she lay motionless on the ground. Antony gathers her in his arms and takes her back to the house. A week later, we find that Lady Whistledown is absent and Kate has yet to wake. Portia decides they should throw a ball to celebrate their financial success. Eloise receives a book with a note from Theo. She goes to him and he says he was trying to protect her and reveals everything he knows about Whistledown. Colin meets with Jack at the new club, but Will steps in calling Jack a swindler, and Colin defends the Featheringtons as a fine family. When Jack returns home, he tells Portia they've exhausted their resources here and suggests they take their racket to America. Kate wakes up and is disappointed when she finds Antony hasn't visited her. Violet speaks with Antony and apologizes for everything he went through when his father died. She explains that the pain was terrible, yes, but she'd choose it again because real, true love is worth it no matter what. Eloise goes to speak with Penelope. They argue and Pen urges her not to see Theo or pursue Whistledown anymore. Eloise ignores her, but when Theo leans in for a kiss, she backs away and ends their friendship to protect him. Ben finds out he got his spot in the academy because Antony made a large donation to the school. Antony finally visits Kate and says he came to apologize and propose. She says not to as she is going back to India and asks him to leave. She speaks with Edwina about earning her trust back and they decide to attend the Featheringtons' ball. Ben and Eloise come together in their old swing hangout, talking about feeling like imposters. Young Gregory seeks Antony's advice about a problem, and Violet overhears them speaking affectionately about their father. Kate is packing when Mary comes to her and they have a heart-to-heart about the past, Mary saying love is not something that is ever owed. And Kate confesses that Antony wanted to propose out of duty. She still doesn't think he loves her. The Queen shows up at the Featherington ball. Eloise goes reluctantly but finds Pen and thanks her for the advice. When Penelope shares the latest gossip, a light bulb seems to go off in Eloise's head. Pen is sad to see Colin dancing with Cressida, but then he takes her necklace and pulls Pen into another room. He tells her the rubies are fake and cousin Jack is a charlatan. He confronts Jack about taking advantage of these women and demands he return everything he's taken and leave town. He then takes Pen to the dance floor, saying she is special to him. Jack starts talking of plans for the future in the Americas, saying they would send for the girls later. He even kisses Portia. Antony and Kate finally decide to dance together. He tells her that no one else matters. The Queen smiles at them and shuts down gossip happening near her, saying it was her choice to end the previous match. She even tells Edwina her nephew the prince is still available. Penelope is going to her room when she finds Eloise going through her things. She has figured out that Penelope is Whistledown. They exchange heated words, and Eloise leaves, saying, "I never want to see or speak to you again." Portia sends Jack back to the Americas penniless, keeping most of the money for herself. Jack says she is cruel, but she says, "I am a mother." Penn overhears Colin speaking about her in an unflattering way, and after some inner monologue, she decides to revive Lady Whistledown once again. Antony and Kate finally declare their love for one another, and fireworks go off as they kiss. We look at the future where they are already married and joining the family at Aubrey Hall for a game of Pall Mall. And that is where we end Season 2 of Bridgerton. Thank you, gentle viewer. I hope you have enjoyed watching, and do note that subscribing would be most considerate, and I will see you for the next season.